Hello, you wonderful people, and welcome to another episode of Not Too Comic Book. This being a show, we talk about TV shows that are adaptations of comic books. For today's episode, I'm going to talk about the latest episode of DC's Legends of Tomorrow. A great episode, a lot of really interesting things going down in this episode, so let's break it down. Immediately leaving the intergalactic bowling alley, it's the whole situation of wish we could have bowled one more, and it's like, no, and so everyone, it's so interesting how obviously the moment Constantine's like, hey, I want to see my Zari, so the Zari switch out, and you can tell it's bothering Bayrod, because at first I was thinking maybe Bayrod was kind of feeling like, oh, I'm kind of losing my sis a little bit, she's so focused on John, it's like, where's our whole thing, because it's like, right, she, rather than be so excited, it's like, oh, hey, you kind of quickly move past me and go to John, and it's like, cool, he matters more, but at the same time, it's like, I got my bro Nate, so it's all good, so that's interesting. But basically because of John, they're going to have to take the long way home, and that's going to take about 3 weeks. So I was like, at first I was like, oh, I thought we would get more into full-blown shenanigans of just being stuck on the ship. It kind of quickly gets there, but the whole aspect of we're just trying to do everything we can, we're bored out of our minds because we're stuck on the ship because they can't do as much as they want to, because the more power they use, the longer the trip is. It's already 3 weeks, and they're just adding hours upon hours to it. So they're kind of stuck with that. Gary's immediately like, hey, let's play a board game, but Sarah and Ava are like, oh no, we got wedding planning to do and stuff like that, which we'll get to in a second. But I thought we would have gotten probably more of the episode being like, oh my god, we're all stuck on this ship, almost like Big Brother-esque. I thought it'd be interesting if they kind of had an episode like that in that regard, oh, we're stuck on the ship, had to do kind of a bit of a Big Brother thing. I thought that'd be the avenue which it went, which it totally didn't. Like I said, they kind of got to the point they're annoyed with each other because they can't play video games. So that sucks for Bayrod and Nate. But then there's also the element of Astra can't fix get Gideon to make her all this food and stuff like that. And it's for food here, you have to do it the old-fashioned way and cook it. And Astra's kind of but I'm like, does she even know actually how to cook? I mean, we saw the episode where she was just basically life beat her down because she's not used to it. I mean, she's lived most of her life, a lot of her adult life in hell, so it's obviously a lot of those aspects of hell you can't, ruling and running hell, you can't really translate that to a real world. So I'm sure she probably had people serving her food, so she probably doesn't actually even know how to cook. We already know she can't really fully, because she's still kind of an adult, but kind of stuck as a kid to a certain extent, just because she didn't really have the experience of growing up a normal life. So there's that. Obviously, John's circumstances are it's having a crippling effect on his body. But to be fair, it's he's literally a magic junkie at this point in time. It's yeah, you can definitely see it. His hand, the way it sounded, it almost sounded it sounded almost like a rebound, right now that it's out of his system, the more he used the power, it rebounds and broke his arm. But maybe it did, because then he kind of goes, but I think it's just either it was a physical reaction, because it did sound like a bone broke. So I just have to use some drugs to kind of make the pain go away and kind of fix it. I mean, it is magic, so he can use that to kind of fix it, but I just thought that was fascinating. Magic always comes with a price. John's learned that the hard way, especially when you're using something as dark as this. And Bayrod's definitely going up on it, because he's right, John's different than normal. But the sad thing is, because because the biggest thing for him is, who am I without my magic? I'm some Joe Schmo. He's had magic for so long, it's become a part of himself. It's so ingrained in him that it's if I don't have it, then who am I? It's not anyone will love you or care about you any differently, because there are regular people on the ship, Zari and Bayrod. Yeah, they have the totems, but they're regular people. Nick is a regular person, they're without super, he's the most regular person because he doesn't have any superpowers, so. But I think it's just in John, it's he defines himself by his magic, so that's always the issue there. So other than that, it does, and I think that's kind of an interesting aspect, I think. I'll go ahead and talk about it, but Spooner and Astra, after last episode, I think they've gotten a little closer, because Spooner later on was I don't trust any of you, except for you. It's because her and Astra became super close after last episode, so I think that's why Spooner's kind of we're becoming good buds, so I think that's pretty dope. But I love the whole Ava and Sarah wedding planning thing. I love it so much. It's just kind of like, all right, here's the A group who we really want to come. The B group, it'd be cool if they come, but if they don't come, it won't be that bad. C group will send out the invitations, hopefully they don't RSVP. It's like, oh, what about the D list? It's like, oh, yeah, those are people we don't want to know that we got married until after the fact. It's like, why is Barry Allen on this list? I love Barry. It's like, I know, babe, but if Barry and Iris show up, some villain is going to show up and ruin our day. So no, it's like, to be fair, it makes sense because they're not aware of their most recent wedding adventure because it's like nothing went wrong then. But I get it. Their previous wedding Crisis on Earth X happened, so like I get it. Like you'd be like, that's a little. I don't want to jinx that. I totally get it. But at the same time, it's like, oh come on, babe, I love it. Me and Barry, we go back. We were there at the end of the multiverse. Come on, babe. It didn't come up in argument, but that is kind of a thing of like, really, you want to get rid of my best bud, one of my fellow paragons, one of my. Like, two of the people that were there at the end of the multiverse, and as well as the birth of this new multiverse, it's like, but I also love the conversation later on. It's like, okay, so why is your fake family on the A-list? She's like, yeah, but I have fond memories of him. It's like, okay, Black Siren is my sister from a different Earth. I'm like, I love that. But it's also like, I understand that Laurel kind of went through a long villain phase. So, of course, you're going to be like, but it's still like, it's my sister. But it's like, technically, it's not your sister. But it's like, yeah, but it's a different version of her. But it's like, yeah, but it's an evil version of her. But she turned over a new leaf. Yeah, but she went a long time killing people and hurting people. So, I just don't want to just, so I love that. I love that the whole little bit. I wish we could have gotten into it more of like, who else is on like the D list? Like, who else is not getting invited and stuff like that. So that's fascinating. But at the core of it, it's like, right, everyone's kind of getting on each other's nerves, especially like Behraj's trying to do like the yoga thing, and then like John comes in, magics it up, and then he wants to strip down Behraj's like, whoa, I just don't want to see that side of it. He's like, oh, it's about like freeing yourself. It's like, if anyone would get that, you would think Behraj would, but it's because Behraj's also annoyed by John, just because it's, like I said, I initially took it as, oh, he's annoyed because John is like, monopolizing his sister, but it's like, no, it's mainly because it's like something's off about John, and he feels like he's the only one that's noticing because Zari's got blinders on when it comes to John. So I just thought that was fascinating. But it's like, right, let's play a game, and it's basically like werewolf / mafia. It's like one of those type of games, and I initially thought what was going to happen is, oh, they're not going to be too into it. They're going to be like, oh, I'm bored or whatever. But then I thought it was going to be a thing of like, they're going to role play. I thought what was going to happen is that as the game progresses, they'll get super into it. Like, no, it's totally like it turns into a bickering. Like, they totally aren't into it, and then they super get into it. I figured what was going to happen. I was thinking like what was going to happen is going to be like a role play thing, which kind of happens, but I wasn't expecting it to be like John brought it to life. I thought we like cut between them playing the game and then them like reenacting it, like scenes like that. I thought that's what we were going to get, but technically it happened, but not to the extent, because I thought it'd be kind of more of a fun like shenanigans and filled like adventure, like once we got to the board game stuff, like once I was like, okay, so this is where we're going, because that's where the title of the episode on board comes from. But I was like, oh, I was actually surprised when it turns out like, oh, John made it, and it went from like, oh, shenanigan fields, like ha ha ha, to like literal horror fest to a certain extent. Obviously very like Clue, even though I haven't seen it, Knives Out, very ask who done it type of situation. Obviously a lot supernatural and scarier version, obviously. Oh yeah, and obviously Jumanji. I was thinking that during the episode, but I couldn't remember what the other game was that I was like, oh, it's very similar to that. It's very similar to Jumanji. I think it's Jumanji. Well, it's Jumanji meets Clue, but it's like a much darker Jumanji. I mean, which when you break down Jumanji, is kind of dark. The whole aspect of being stuck inside the game and everything. But I think it's so interesting. Well, I'm also basing that on the like original Jumanji because I haven't seen the 2 new Jumanjis. Not I have anything against them. I just haven't taken time to watch them. But yeah, especially because I thought that was such an interesting caveat to the game of like, yeah, if the werewolf, the monster kills everyone, if it wins, basically the roles get reshuffled, and you have to start all over again, so they could potentially be stuck in there forever because the only way to get out is to actually win. And I think that's so interesting because I would have loved if we could have leaned into that, because I'm curious, would they have shifted I think I get why they didn't do it, because shit, like the monster needed to be a specific person, and I'm curious, like the roles would have been recast, like would the monster have been, or what? That would have been fun to kind of dive into that, because it would have been a trial and error thing of like, right, we have to figure out who it is, but how do we know if it's the same person or not? Maybe it's someone different, and that'd be a thing of like, God, this is like the 7th time we do it. All right, we're at the 50th time. Like, I think that would have been an interesting development, but I get why they kept it to just one. But I think this could have easily been an episode like they could have leaned into like montages like, yep, we got it wrong, we all got killed again. I think that's just like, if the entire episode was just that, I think they probably would have done that, but because there's like some other stuff happening throughout the episode, maybe that's why they didn't do it. But because at first when like Ava died, I was like, oh, and she just has dead and she can't talk, I was like, oh, I thought that was just like, oh, I expected that to be like them immediately, like she dies and they find out, oh my God, this is real. Like I figured that's where it was going to go. Like, you know, these type of things, it's like, yeah, the game becomes real. Like I figured, but like it's like, oh, her death is just that. I was like, oh, I guess it's going to be pretty mild then. But then it's like the next person to die was Nate. Once again, it's that typical thing of like, right, I'm the one who knows this game better than anyone. It's like you wanted to get rid of the detective out of the way, is kind of Sarah's jump thing, but then like Astra's like, yeah, but you're quick to jump in on Nate, so that kind of makes you look suspicious. I think it's so interesting. And then you have like Behrad not wanting to abstain just because he's upset by the whole circumstances of it all. But yeah, then Nate gets literally stabbed in the back. Then Ava's body is she's dead, but then like you have Sarah being like, okay, like it's, so I'm wondering, was she originally the monster, but then the roles got switched? Or was she just going to say like, all right, I'm going to tell you up front, I'm this character, I'm not the monster. I don't know. But then she gets killed and I'm like, oh boy. I also appreciate, like I said, like the very Jumanji-esque aspect of like when you go back to the board, because the game is actually playing itself because of magic. And so like, you know, the pieces that represent them and everything. So I did like I said, if that whole episode was that, we probably would have gotten Gary narrating things and be like, oh my God, what do? I'm the budding alien magician that I am. Maybe I could find some way around this for them, you know? So obviously it's a conversation of like, hey, like who did it? Like Zari, not Zari, but well, yeah, Zari stays with John and Behrad while Spooner and Astra go off on their own, but the whole place is like a literal maze, and no matter where they turn, they end up back like it's a magical loop essentially. But then they get killed. I bounce between being like the person I was like most suspicious of was actually Behrad. I was thinking like the way he was acting, I was like, that's probably like the biggest facade. So then I was also, because the moment it came down to like, is it going to be me or you? Like Zari had to choose. I figured like I was leaning then thinking like it's going to seem like it's John, but it's actually Behrad. But I figured that was going to come up just because it's the element of because of everything that's going on between all of them right now. Like I figured that was going to like, yeah, like, oh, I vote John. Well, I vote Behrad. Zari, you have to be the deciding factor, and she didn't want to, because it's like choosing between. She eventually admits later on the guy that she loves and her brother, which even Behrad was like, wait, you love him? I've never heard you talk about that before, because he's always protective of her because she's always never had the best taste in boyfriends. I mean, let's not forget who her previous significant other was, a total douchebag, you know? So, you know, it's understandable, like, you know, and it seems like that's kind of been a theme throughout her history, at least from Behrad's perspective. So, but also, once again, he even says it, she's like, yeah, you hate John. He's like, I don't hate John. I don't dislike John. I love the guy. It's just something's not right about him lately. So that's what that comes down to. But like I said, because she loves John, she has blinders on. So, but I thought the real twist was going to be like, are we going to get a twist where it's actually Zari? She's actually the one the entire time. Like, maybe that'd be it. But I think it was a better decision to make it. It's like, oh no, it literally is John, because it did seem like it's the monster, because it seems like the monster is one of them, but I'm like, but it seems like it's actually not. Well, I was thinking like when it's revealed to be John, I thought it was going to be a circumstance of like, oh, your mind is basically splintering. So like right now you're talking to yourself, but the moment like the beast takes control, it's going to be you manifested as the beast. I thought that's what it was going to be, but it's like, no, the beast is you, but it's a separate entity. It's like split from you. It's like, oh, you don't control the magic controls you. Every sip of that magic potion 9 you take makes the game stronger, makes me stronger, because you try to magic your way out of this. But yeah, I'm the dark parts of yourself, the dark part that basically destroys all your relationships and, you know, endangers all the people that you love, the part of you that you're never willing to look at in the face-to-face. The dark side of yourself, you always push to the side and just kind of ignore, because that's an aspect of himself he's just never confronted before. So luckily, Zari stabs the beast, killing him. But the thing is, no one recognized that, like, because it was from behind, so they didn't realize it was John. So the game ends. It's like, oh, and I guess the beast wasn't any of us. And I love the Ash. Yeah, because I answered my question. Like, yeah, the moment the game started, like inside, like moment John cast his spell, like the beast actually was Sarah. I forgot about it because Ava Amit goes, moment she pops out, she's like, oh, I'm alive again. But Sarah, she's the beast. It's like, no, it wasn't any of us. But it's like, because the magic took over the game and warped things to it. Saying, so it's like, yeah, she was the beast. That's what she was going to confess, thinking it would end the game. But it's like, she was no longer the beast. Like, that had already been taken from her in that regard. That's why I'm saying, like, I'm curious, like, if the roles had kept getting switched, would it have been a thing of, right, whoever it was the beast, would they have stayed the beast, like that being John? But that could have played into it, like, but that could be like the kind of 3D chess element, well, the 4D chess element of it, rather, where it'd be like, you have to start thinking, like, well, could the roles have switched, or has the same person actually, because obviously with games like that, you can, like, get the same role, like, oh, this person's like, oh, the werewolf or the mafia this round, and the same thing this round, or same, you know, same thing with like Gmod or something like that, where like, oh, well, who's the killer type of thing. You get what I'm saying. I watch enough Achievement Hunter playing Gmod that, you know, that immediate reference that kind of pops in my head the most. They're the ones I've watched play Gmod the most. So regardless of tangents and all that side, it would have been interesting to know like how they would have shifted it, but I think it makes sense why they made it just like a one round thing. I mean, because a lot of people will make things like one round depending on like how long the game goes. In this particular case, you know, like I said, there's other stuff going on in an episode. But I also love that Ava's like, can we do it again? Everyone's like, no, we literally was trapped in the game. To be fair, you were dead most of the time, so you were unaware of what went down, so it makes sense why. But she's like, no, he's like, do you want to die again? She's like, no, I'm not going to die again because I'm going to win. It's like her competitive nature. She wanted to play again just so she can win. I'm like, no, I'm not going to die this time. I'm going to figure it out. You know, so I love that. I love that about you, Ava. So at the same time, they come back. We have to deal with the aftermath of everything else going on the ship. Obviously, Gary and Mick are the only ones, and it's like Mick's hair's grown out because it's a byproduct of the pregnancy and everything. And I'm like, it's like, oh, he's like, oh, don't like hide your hair and stuff like that. I'm like, let me see you with this hair. It's going to be a wig, obviously, but I'm like, it's going to be so, just in general, I know it's going to be a wig, but it's still going to be weird seeing Dominic Perel with like hair, because like more like I can't like most of his career I feel like he's always like shaved, had his head like kind of shaved like it is. It's like as a Mick. I'm trying to remember the last time I remember him having like hair as like a character. I haven't. It's probably been so long I don't remember, like whatever the case may be. But I do love that we get to see it and it's like pure jet black. So I'm wondering, whatever the case may be, it's so wild. But obviously, it's like the moment the ship pops up and he's like, oh, I want to fire. But Sarah as a captain, made a decision that they're not going to use anything that would lengthen their travel. But he's like, well, Sarah's going, so that inadvertently makes me the captain. And he's like, I don't think that's how that works. I would assume that's how it works. But I mean, because that's always been the argument. Because it's like, right, if Sarah's out of commission, if Ava's out of commission, then it goes to Nate because he's the next senior member. Well, no, because it would be Mick. I mean, I guess it makes sense because Mick is like the only other OG left after Sarah, so you would think. But I guess like Nate has kind of assumed position of like intern captain. I don't know. It's interesting to think like what is the actual hierarchy of that. But it ended up being Kayla, which I'm not surprised by. I'm like, oh, cool, so we're bringing Kayla back. But it was kind of suspicious under the circumstances she came back. It is interesting to learn about their species biology, where it's like, oh, Lefty's gone, and it's like, wait, it has a name? It's like, oh, yeah, like, yeah, these appendages of ours can, like, regenerate, but they are their own species, too, so we do name them, so. But Mick, caring so much about Kayla, ends up regenerating her tentacle, even though he doesn't need to. It's like, yeah, we'll regenerate after a while, but it's like he cares about her. I'm sure like he's getting even more sentimental because of the whole pregnancy thing, but it's also because he cares about her. He hasn't probably like really like cared about someone like outside of the team like that for a while. I mean, aside from like, you know, his daughter. But I think it also stems from the fact is of like, yeah, she was kind of like his partner in crime, and like obviously the last partner in crime he had died, so he's into the whole mentality of like, right, like you never leave your partner behind. Like he even literally said that last time. But Kayla's upset with him. Obviously, it's like, oh, you left me to die. Like I managed to fight my way out, but you could tell Gary's kind of like, something's not right. He's very suspicious of her. Obviously, the moment she messes with the warp drive, I was like, okay. Which even Gary's like, don't tell her you're pregnant, because if she does, our species, like the males are subservient. So basically, if the female feels that you are not a good enough host, a good enough father, she will use like the grip of love or whatever, kill you, and then devour the eggs from your brain. So don't tell her, and also don't trust her. But then it turns out, like, moment like Lefty's actually around and starts fighting and strangling Gary, and then Kayla's like, right, I'm betraying you because he, and the moment she said he, I was like, they didn't have to show it at the end of the episode. Like, at the moment the feet start growing, the moment she said he, I was like, well, the only he left is Bishop. I'm wondering, what does that mean for the rest of the Ava clones? Like, did he, like, kill them in retribution? Because I guess some fragment of that data, like, I guess, because it was down to the wire, so before the program got corrupted, like, maybe there was, like, maybe it's a situation of, yeah, it may not have been 100%, so either it did reach 100%, even for a microsecond, enough for him to survive, or either he had a backup plan and there was like a backup program of him there, or maybe it's a thing of, even though it didn't reach 100%, say like it reached like 99, that's enough. Yes, that 1% of him is gone forever. There's no getting it back. Very similar to, spoilers, Preacher, when it came to the whole Genesis thing. Like, Genesis didn't work because it wasn't whole anymore. Like, what if it was something in that regard? Like, he may not ever be fully whole, but there was enough like already downloaded that he was good. Like, so I don't know. I'm curious about that. But yeah, the moment she's about to kill him, he's like, I'm pregnant. She's like, what? And she feels his head and then does the love grip. He's like, no, not the love grip. So that's kind of a bummer. And obviously everyone comes back and like, all right, we're checking up on things. Obviously there's a conversation between Behrad and Zarya where he was like, yeah, I'm sorry. I'm very protective. She's like, no, you're not I'm like, basically like, I'm older, so I look after you. You don't look after me. Like, I can, what person do you think I can't like take care of? And it's like, Mom. And she's like, well, more like Mom can't handle me or whatever. But it's like, yeah. So he was saying earlier in the episode, like, maybe we should tell Mom the truth about everything. Like, but it's like, nah, he's like, right, I'm just going to go back, have a happy meal with Mom and stuff like that. Like, enjoy Mom's cooking type of thing. So, and also it's like, are you going to tell John how you feel? Obviously, that's the scariest thing of telling, the person you care about, like, how you really feel about them. So, but as they're, John kind of makes an excuse to be like, oh yeah, I'm fine. That spell took it out of me, so I'm gonna go rest in my house. And he goes to try and pour out the rest of the drink, but he can't. He's an addict. Like, this point, it's like, oh, he can't let it go. Even recognizing that darker self, looking at his own reflection, it's still that thing of like, there's some part of him that is like turning away, refusing to look at that darker part of himself. But also, it's like, right, he's so addicted to this now. It's like, right, if I give this up, like, you're hooked, like any drug. And once again, like, I think that's something like the magicians treated magic like a literal drug in many different cases. I mean, hell, you had characters like Josh who literally used their magic to get high, so yeah. But he couldn't bring himself to get rid of it. And I think what he's probably going to try and do is cut it out cold turkey, but it's like, yeah, that's not going to be easy, especially when you have the temptation of keeping it on you. So, but I think he's going to try and fight it off, but I don't think that's going to be possible, because I think circumstances are going to come up when he needs to use his magic, and he's just like, I'm going to try and make excuses, and then probably drink some more, and that's going to be the final push to completely send him over the edge. Maybe not. We'll have to wait and see in that regard. But obviously, we didn't see Kayla on the ship, but we did hear Bishop. So maybe Kayla was in that room where, like, Sarah was hearing the song and being like, wait, no way. So it's like, yeah, I'm surprised. I think that's an interesting development of being like, oh yeah, Bishop is the main antagonist and he is back into the forefront. He disappeared for a while, but oh, don't get it twisted, he's back. Because most of their main antagonists usually stick around the entire season. I mean, it's never always like a full confrontation. They're usually in the background, but at least they have like some underlings out there still doing their thing. It's like, well, they've went quite a few episodes. Like, the back half of this season has basically been not really dealing with that. So, for them to kind of bring it back with like, what, 3 episodes left? Yeah. Yeah, because I believe this is episode 12. So yeah, 3 episodes left this season. So it's definitely going to be interesting to see how that ultimately plays out. Because now Bishop is still going to kind of get what he wants about perfecting humanity. He is now back on Earth. This time frame of Earth 2, so I'm assuming that's like present day Earth, not less Kayla like took them to a very specific point in time on Earth. Who knows? But that's definitely going to be interesting to see how that all plays out, because his prized possession, that being Sarah, is still there. So we're going to see if there's still anything else he has injected in her that might play things out a little differently. I'm sure Kayla is going to be complicated, because it's like, man, I do like Mick because she didn't kill him. So it's like, right, she does believe him to be like a strong enough person because she does legitimately like him. I think as a personality to be like, okay, I think he would be a good father. So I think that's why she left him alive and didn't just like eat the eggs out of his head. I think it was just kind of like she owes him, because it's like, right, you saved my life when everyone else abandoned me. So, but I think in the end she'll shift sides. But we'll ultimately see how that plays out. Especially, like I said, I haven't talked about the other thing about this season. Like I'm just like I said, just anyone that doesn't know it, I'll bring it up when it happens in the show. But I talked about it earlier in the season. I haven't really talked about it since. But I think Kayla's part of the story is going to tie up with other elements of this season in certain regards. But we'll ultimately have to wait and see. But I'm very excited to see where the next episode takes us with all of this. Oh, because I actually skipped over it a little bit too, but Zari now realizes, like, oh, John was the Beast, because she found, like, the wound on his back from when she stabbed the Beast. So it's like, okay, so now she knows the truth. So it's like, how she's going to handle that, especially because she was on the verge of telling him she loves him, but now she realizes, like, oh, Beirut was right, there's something off, so how she handles that, it's going to be a big, interesting development as well, so. But really, that's all I want to talk about. So the next time we meet, be happy, be safe, live life to the fullest, and enjoy it. Good day, and goodbye.